Georgia leaves Auburn with a 20-10 win after getting down 10-0. Georgia says, "Hey, we'll take it from here," and the Dogs score the next 20 points. What I'm going to do is give you this intro, and I'm going to record a little bit more later. Thanks to all of our partners, Red Zone, certainly our friends at So Poly Outdoor Furniture. Take advantage of their offer. Use the code DEAN Dean10. But this was a really look. This is what Georgia is now. They're not just going to blow people out. They're going to have to be physically tough. It's just everywhere we go, there's sound. And I mean, at least that's not explosive sound. Like everywhere we go in this place, there's sound. It's crazy. There's no. I don't understand that, man. It's frustrating. This is. We do work here, and I understand other people are working too. But I mean, there's been like a lot of bangs the whole night. All this stuff. We got Cam Newton walking on the sideline as if we can shoot through them. Can't happen. It's crazy. So anyway, a big win for Georgia. Kirby was emotional after the game. Talking about how much this game means to him, his son, and his father, who had passed over New Year's, and he took his son Andrew, who's at a lot of these games, and is definitely very interested in football. It seems, sports generally speaking. But I thought it was a big win for Georgia. They got to play better. This was the game to me that was pivotal, like a really important game for Georgia. Obviously for Auburn, now they're 0-3 in league play. What happened after Auburn got the 10-0 lead was what I thought would happen a lot of the game, which was they were going to struggle to move the ball. But Georgia's got to play better. I mean, they could have lost tonight for sure. Now, should they have lost? No. After the first quarter, definitely. I'll have more on it soon.
Okay, where were we? Listen, it's the next morning, obviously, or the next afternoon at this point. That was brutal getting out of there, man. Auburn's got to do a lot better job with a lot of different stuff in terms of. But look, I thought it was a really good win for Georgia. I don't think it was. I don't know that Auburn's very good. In fact, I'm not sure that they are. When you look at everything, Georgia with only 79 yards rushing. I'll have to go back and do the math. They're not great when you run for fewer than 100 yards. I mean, they were outrushed by almost 60 yards last night. Now, a lot of that was in the first half for Auburn. I mean, total yardage, Georgia squeaked out more, but I mean, that was because Auburn couldn't throw it. I mean, Auburn could not do anything in the second half. When we were driving back, I was doing some numbers. I mean, Georgia at one point in the first half had 20 yards. This was before the last drive of the half. Georgia had 20-something yards, and then they added 88. And then, so they had as many yards in penalties as they had in total yards. For Auburn, in the second half, until their final drive, they had 20 yards. They had, I think, 4 3-and-outs or something like that. I mean, it was lopsided. Georgia was clearly the better team. Auburn was clearly the better team for a quarter. And, I talked about this, y'all, a lot. I'm going to start driving here in a second. I did want to get some of the numbers out, but like Gunner went for 36 passes last night. That's a lot. That's a lot for him. Jackson Arnold was 19 of 31. He's a good explosive runner. He was their leading rusher with 55 yards. He's not a good quarterback. There's a difference. Gunner is a good quarterback. Here's the other problem, too, last night was that Gunner was both quarterbacks were the leading rushers and passers. Like, that's not going to work for Georgia over time. But last night they had to get through it. Zachariah Branch really mattered a ton for Georgia last night. And I think him and that play from Raylan Wilson was the difference in the game. Look, listen, it was a fumble, okay? So I'm going to just completely address these things right away. That was a fumble. It should have resulted in a Georgia touchdown, period. Now, why did it not result in a Georgia touchdown? Because half the sideline was on the field. I do not recall hearing a whistle blown. But in all fairness to the Auburn, the experience of Jordan Hare, those fans have no idea what's going on. And what I mean by that is, there's so much video replay of things from different angles. It's like Auburn's trying to trigger its own fan base. I said this in 3, and I'm pretty sure I probably said it in 21, but like any replay they're showing on the screen, it is going to make it look like Auburn got jobbed. No one else does that in the SEC. And I got to say, if I were the SEC, I would like politely say to them, you're not helping yourselves here. You're just, riling up your fan base. It was like an algorithm gone wild, the way that they were about it. But whatever. I mean, it was very just, I was not impressed at all by that whole thing. Again, I go to a lot of stadiums. That just does not happen at other places. And so he fumbled the football before the line of scrimmage. That was the call on the field. I think it was pretty evident. We've got photos on Dawg Post. You can see something that Dawg Nation had. He just never possessed the ball as the ball crossed the line. It was out. So you have to have control of the ball, or it's a fumble. It was a fumble. And, Georgia should have gotten a touchdown out of that. I mean, the legitimate play there, the Auburn fans should not be mad about that. That is not a real thing. It was a fumble. They were fortunate that they didn't have 4 more points on the scoreboard because that was a touchdown. Secondly, on the timeout thing, Kirby called a timeout. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. After the game, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and I don't know if he got confused or he just was like, I'm going to say, he definitely called a timeout. There's no question. He also was very animated before the timeout and screaming at them, they are clapping, which they were. Auburn was clapping, which is an illegal thing. You cannot do that. So I don't understand why Georgia was not charged a timeout there. That makes no sense to me. That said, it's irrelevant as it relates to the end of the game. So the officiating was just not good last night, period. But it did not, the result of the game would not have changed with, Georgia being charged a timeout or not. They weren't. They should have been charged a timeout from my perspective. And I think I was talking to Jason Getz, who's a photographer for Atlanta and for the AJC, and he was to my right. And Cody Chaffins from Dawg Nation in Atlanta as well was to my left. And we have spots, and we prefer the spots that we go to. There's a reason why I shoot where I shoot and the reason why Jason shoots where he shoots. I'm not going to get into all that. But so then you just, you're naturally bored at times. There were so many instant replay reviews that after a while it was just like what is the point of this? Why is this so slow? It was not a well administered game. I think, I was texting with a reporter that covers the SEC this morning, and he was like, do you think that the SEC is going to put out a statement? And I'm like, no. I saw Matt Hayes, who I do not know, but bro, no one's getting suspended. A college coach getting suspended for calling a timeout or for lying. What are you talking about, man? All due respect. And I don't know you, but I've been doing this as long as you have. What are you talking about? So that's ridiculous. Of course he's going to do all he can. He lies plenty. That's not new. These coaches are going to do all they can do to get an advantage. What is the advantage? Now, what was the advantage from that play for Georgia, the timeout? I'm not aware that anything, what happened on these drives was going to happen. The missed field goal was the missed field goal. The touchdown, all those things were going to happen. There was no distinct advantage that occurred because of that, timeout that should have been charged. I think Georgia, they don't have that in the notes. I should have been more prepared for this. If I'm not mistaken, Georgia ended the game with a timeout. Now, look, that's all that, whatever. I hesitate to call it conspiracy theory. Auburn, the Oklahoma game, that was stolen from them. This game, they lost by 10 points. It probably should have been more like 14 or 17. I mean, that was a fumble. You're talking about 4 more points. He misses a field goal. That's 3 more points. Now, you can't keep adding points up, but probably should have been a 14-point win for Georgia. It wasn't. And, they got to play better at the start of games. They got to get off the field on defense. That's the biggest thing. And then, I don't know what happens going into the second half where they just like completely put handcuffs on the other team's offense. But I will say at least for Alabama, they moved the ball some. Like there was some fear that Alabama might score. Auburn, you can feel it, man. You can feel it. You can feel it in stadiums when the momentum has switched and the off switch is over. That's why that first drive is so important when you're playing Georgia. If you can score, you got a shot in that game. Alabama scored, they won. Tennessee scored, they had a shot. Tennessee's got to play better. But if you don't score in that first drive, you're probably not going to win. You're probably not going to win. So I think Georgia folks, and this is not new. This is not a Glenn Schumann thing. For a long time, first drives against Kirby have done pretty well. I think this coming week, when you step into the Ole Miss situation, who did not play well against Washington State, and who I think is going to have a challenge in Athens, Lane will do a good job, okay, in the first quarter and all that. Lane's a good offensive coordinator. He's really good at that. If I think if you're Georgia, you say, hey, let's just hold these guys to a field goal. And that's the other thing. With the exception of the Tennessee game, particularly the first quarter, there's not been a lot of explosives on Georgia this season. And they certainly have not had a lot of explosives themselves. They got to play better at the start of games. I mean, like, they had the ball for like 6 minutes until the last drive, something like that. It wasn't, and by the end of the game, they really had kind of, they controlled. At the end of the game, Georgia had more time in possession, but that's got to be better. And like Kirby is no longer like adversarial about it, or he wasn't last night. It's a problem. It's not working. That's not going to work. And it's problematic. Oh boy. It's problematic for this team. They've got to do a better job. Look at that. There you go. They've got to do a better job of addressing these problems. And I don't know enough about football to say what it is, but it's a clear issue. I mean, if you ask for, this is not the right way to put it, but if I'm not a chef, but I know when someone's put raw onions on my hamburger. I don't want raw onions, so don't put them on there. It's easier said than done, right? But I think for Georgia, 4,000 or 4 foot level, they gutted it out. They made the big plays when they had to make the big plays. They won a game at a rival, and that was difficult to do. I think they made it harder than it had to be, but that was difficult to do. I did not think last night was anything nuts. I've seen way crazier at Auburn, okay? Now, I've been around the block for a while, and I've seen prayer at Jordan Hare. I've seen the Cam game in 2010, but they got to be aggravated getting their ass beat constantly by Georgia. I mean, Georgia in the 80s, which is before my time slightly, but not by a lot. I remember it very well in Atlanta and how important that game was, and Georgia just never kind of could figure out how to win the game when they needed to win it. So like 88, I think the league was on the line. They lost. Anyway, you get the point. 83 for sure. So there were several times when it came down to just Georgia and Auburn, or certainly once in 83. But I think someone could correct me if I'm wrong about that, the 88 or 87, whichever it was. And Auburn would just get them. And there was a period of time where Auburn would, they just sort of dominated the series. But Georgia would win games. Auburn's just getting dominated now, and we're not going to see Auburn again this season. I mean, they're done. That's 3 conference losses. It ain't going to be the Birmingham Bowl, but it's not going to be, it'll be like the Belk Bowl, and they'll do what they do. And but I mean, Matt, when we were riding back last night, was like, man, no, I said Alabama, they're not beating Alabama. He goes, well, where's the game? And I said, it's at Auburn. He goes, I give, it's 51% Alabama wins that game. I'm like, no, dude, no, not with that quarterback. You have to play quarterback. You can't play running back with quarterback, spot. You have to play the position. And that's what a gunner is so good at. He totally understands how to play the position. Against Alabama, there were moments where he didn't play unreal, I think. But other than that, I mean, I'm thinking of the Kentucky game. That one throw, I'm gonna bring that up constantly. But like in the 200 throws or whatever, like he's really, and I'm not talking about the interception against Kentucky. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the other ball. So, but that's 4 foot level. That was a fumble. It's not hard. I mean, and like you can say it wasn't. All right, fine. So it was a touchdown for Auburn? No, it was not ruled a touchdown. They could have overturned it. No, it just wasn't. And if the same thing were the case with Georgia, I would say, hey, look, I thought it was a touchdown, but it is what it is. Stop them. Get the ball right back. Go up 13-0 rather than, so they let Georgia go all the way down the field on them when they'd done nothing and kick a field. They almost scored a touchdown. Like it felt for a moment there like these guys might score a touchdown. Didn't quite get where they needed to go on it. But, and then in the second half, the second drive for Georgia, they come out and score. It was 10-all, and you saw, there's a picture I have of the offensive linemen where like the offensive linemen were like, we're winning this game. This is done. This is stupid. We're doing it. And they did. 40,000 foot view, I'm finally getting to. And then I'm going to complain about a lot of stuff, so hang on for that. Look, that was a tricky game. That was like if you were worried about a game, it was that game for me. I think you needed to get a split with Tennessee and Alabama. It's starting to look like they won the right game and lost the right game. Now, if you beat Ole Miss, you're in about as good a position as anybody in college football. And here's why I say that. Texas can still throw haymakers in a game. Red River rivalry cannot be taken seriously in any way in terms of future performance. That game makes no sense. Charlie Strong won that game a bunch of times. So you will forgive me if I'm not, paying too much attention. I've seen enough of Texas to know they are not trustworthy. The Gators can throw a punch, but they're 2-4 now, and it's trouble right now. And they will come into that thing, and everybody will be blitzed, drunk, and all that, and that's fine. But it's going to be hard for Florida to beat Georgia. And then you talk about Tech, and people will not shut up talking about Tech, who is a 2.5-point dog at Duke. Georgia will be like a 10-point favorite to beat Tech, and everybody will be wringing their hands the whole week. And I understand that. I get it. Those are the tricky games after this week, where you are a 7-point favorite, 6.5, 7-point favorite, 6-7. Shout out, Audrey. Where you are a touchdown favorite over over Ole Miss at home. It's not a night game, thank God. And you should win the game. So you get the job done there. And you roll into this thing 6-1. You can still win the league. A&M's got a lot going on. Then you would have a win over Ole Miss, who is also undefeated. A&M is undefeated. Everybody ain't going to be undefeated, okay? But you need to get to the end of the season with 2 losses or fewer. And if I were to guess right now, I would say there's no game I would pick against Georgia. It's also challenging to say that they will go through this thing undefeated the rest of the way, because I've watched enough of them to know that losses are just out there for them to grab. Like, it's like a comma in writing. If you want to use a comma, okay, if you do it properly. So this is not an excellent team. This team does not have a lot of first-round draft picks, if any. I don't know. Zachariah Branch is making a lot of plays. I don't know if he's a first-round draft pick. But, I mean, damn, man. They are definitely willing to fight you. Like, I don't know if you ever got into fights when you were a kid. I was a bigger person. And so, like, sometimes you would tell someone to stay down. Like, the fight was over. And you, started feeling bad for them. And they just would keep getting up and fighting. It's like, stop, man. Like, I'm not really trying to hurt you. Georgia's that kid that you put on the ground. They're just like, no, dude, let's go again. Like, oh, God, we got to keep fighting these guys? Yes, you do. The whole game. And it's probably their number one attribute is just like, this is the wrong way to put it, but, like, not caring. Like, they don't care. and I think that can work against them sometimes. Like, oh, well, they scored on the first drive. We've done this, multiple times. Just force a field goal or a punt against the Rebels. Don't permit double-digit scores in the first quarter, and I think Georgia will kind of, routine Ole Miss. I think they could win it a little more substantially than other folks do. I don't know. The quarterback at Ole Miss, the new guy, he's coming from not an SEC level. He does stuff sometimes you just can't do that in the SEC. Jackson Arnold last night, I was telling the guys on the text thread during the game, which got a little bit jumpy at times, that I was like, this guy's going to throw a pick or two. He never did. And again, let me slow down here. Bro went, where did he go? 19 of 31 for 137 yards. 137 yards. That's not good enough. Now, this guy next week might go for 300. So, you don't know. I don't know what the status is with Ernest Green. Ernest dressed out last night. He did not dress out against Kentucky. He did not look quite right. Monroe Freeling looked fine. Wong Gaston's probably those guys are getting more and more used to their situation. Again, what are you like at the end of the season? Auburn was a train wreck last night. Like, Cam was in Athens in 18. Like, he's around some. And, like, the dotted line's for everybody. It's not, I know it was his night. I know he was, like, sort of the bride, so to speak, of the wedding. But, like, the entourage and, like, he's full Auburn, man. Like, he's completely full-blooded. And I did not see the halftime show, but, man, it was like getting out of Beirut after that game. There was, like, bangs and, like, it was insane, the amount of just stuff that was going on the field, in the court, in the whatever they're called, in the corridors after the game. Like, that's where we set up to work. There was a person from Auburn, from Auburn University, who literally sat in my spot right when I needed to sit down and had her stuff on my computer. If I had closed my computer, the screen would have cracked. So I don't know, like, if that's like a parallel. I've gone to Auburn since 1996. I've worked there since 2004, 2, whatever it is. I don't understand, like, it's not a great situation off the field. The field's okay. I mean, like, they do an excellent job. You said those turf people, they're out there immediately, like, during the game. That's what they're doing. They're managing the turf. But, like, that post-game situation, or I couldn't get a vest for like an hour to go onto the field. So, like, there's so much stuff that, like, that just, like, and I don't like to complain because it just, but damn, man, like, that just didn't seem like it was. But the traffic. We left the stadium. We never leave the stadium within 30 minutes of the game ending. Never. I think we left the stadium at like 12:30 or 1. And we didn't take the media shuttle. We walked back because, that's what we don't want to wait around. And, there's always someone can be there in front of you, and then you got to wait for another shuttle, and, like, you're sitting there for 30 minutes. We feel like we are in good shape. And so we just do it. We get our steps in. But, like, when you get to your car and you're just sitting there, like, no one's moving at all, that was nuts. We didn't get dinner. There was, like, it was just not a good situation. I got back to East Athens at 5:30 in the morning. And I'm not sure if we're going to be doing the back and forth anymore. At night, these night road games, just like, we're friends, right? They kill us. It is exhausting. I don't think Matt got home until, I think Matt texted us at 4:30 or 4:45. We still had another 30 minutes, like, to go. And it's just too much. It's just too much. But then it's, like, impossible to stay in, like, LaGrange or Noonan. Like, you get to Noonan, you're like, let's just go. But that Georgia contingent, like, the Redcoats get smaller and smaller and smaller. And, like, that was the other thing, too, when you look at the crowd. Like, the Auburn people, Georgia was driving. Georgia was up 3. There was like 2.5 minutes to go. They were up 3. A play, Auburn can win the game. People were leaving. They weren't waiting to see if Georgia was going to kick a field goal. They weren't there to make noise on 4th down. They weren't doing this, that, and the other. They left. I would say 30% of their crowd left. I don't understand that. Like, I know sometimes that happens in Athens where people are like, all right, I'll watch it from the hedges, but then we're leaving. No, they left. And the other thing about Auburn, if I can just continue, they have boosters, donors. So it goes stands, track, hedges. Like, they're not hedges. They're the sticky kind, whatever they were. That's what I had when I was growing up in Clarkston. My first home in Clarkston, we had the hedges that if you touched them, you'd get stuck. That's what Auburn's got. Well, they removed half of those and they put like a drinking area basically. And like there's kids and like I almost I'm just walking with, I don't know, 35, 40 pounds of metal gear. And like there's little kids and the kids are having fun. Like it ain't on the kids. But like I think it's not great personally. If I were Auburn or their insurance carrier, I'd be like, do we really want boosters that are drunk like that far from Georgia players and perhaps the head coach? They hate Kirby. Oh my God. They hate him. I mean, it's worse than Alabama. They hate him. And like, I don't think that's a great situation, but it's their deal. And like, there were no security guards to open the gates half the time. It was a mess. It was a mess. It was a mess. And shout out Josh Kendall. If you don't know Josh Kendall, he covers the Falcons for The Athletic. And Josh told me in 2004 or something, 2003, he goes, he's so right. And listen to my words. He said, people don't know how good it is in Athens. They have no idea. And he's not just talking about the downtown, the school, everything, the vibe. He was talking about all of it, and Sanford Stadium in particular. It is so much better than anywhere else. It just is. In terms of working there, not close. Not close at all. It is not even close. In terms of like all the other ancillary things, traffic at Georgia's not great. It's not like Auburn. It ain't like Clemson. I told my wife last night, I said, she Clemson person, and like, I said, I think Auburn's worse than Clemson. I said, you know what? She said, well, I've been once, and she said, you might be right. I mean, and if you're worse than Clemson in traffic, it's bad. But the team, they drove back. I think they got back within 2 hours. They were, state trooper in it all the way back. It was so interesting too because about 8 Georgia and Alabama troopers went over to get the kicking ball after the field goal that put Georgia up 13-10. They would not give the ball back. Some fan would not give the ball back. They didn't throw it over. I think they just didn't give it back. And so the Georgia ball kids, ball boys, lack of a better term, they got the state troopers. They went over there. That was the funniest thing I think I've ever seen. They were pointing at the guy. But you beat Ole Miss and you take it from there. And you just look like globally, it's time to fire James Franklin. It just is what it is. Okay, first of all. Secondly, Billy's probably going to get to the end of the season. I don't know if the Gators got one more punch in them. They'll probably save it for Georgia or Florida State or something like that. But they can punch a little bit. I don't know if they can do it for 60 minutes. Indiana beating Oregon on the road, you clearly have to take Indiana seriously. I just don't know that we know a ton. I know we're at week 7 or whatever this is coming up, week 8. But, like, I think Ohio State's good. I don't know. Penn State isn't. And, like, Alabama's definitely, I was not surprised that they beat Mizzou. They'll probably lose a game somewhere. So they probably will get to Atlanta and they'll probably have one loss. And that game will be determine who's the 2 and who's the 4 going into the playoffs, okay? Because the Big 12 ain't going to. And the ACC is garbage. So, Miami and Georgia Tech and Duke are probably the best 3 teams in that league. Maybe Louisville. I mean, one of those teams, maybe 2 of those teams are top 15 teams. You do have an opportunity if you're Georgia to, get a win over Ole Miss, have a win over Tennessee, have a win over Georgia Tech if they win their league. That's 3 solid wins. You're only going to play so many games. So I think that Georgia, this was a critical game. It was important. It was very important. They won it. I don't know that we'll remember this game in a massive way. I mean, I think of all the times I've been to Auburn, and 96 was memorable because of UGA and because of it being in overtime. 98 was completely doesn't matter. 2000 I think was overtime with Terrence Edward, or they just missed overtime, whatever it was. I think it was overtime. They lost 29-26, something like that. 02, obviously, I think people remember. 04, Auburn was that was a really good Auburn team. They were just way better than a good Georgia team. 06, I remember Matthew in the rain, Craig Lumpkin. They really, that was Kenneth Harris had a huge catch in that game. Shout out. So Brandon Sutherland. 08, Georgia saving themselves. 2010, Cam with not being suspended and all that. And then 12, a total blowout at Auburn. Then 13, player at Jordan Hare. 15 was nondescript, a tight Georgia win, 20-13, something like that, touchdown. Isaiah McKenzie, I think, had a couple touchdowns on special teams. That might be right, but he definitely had some score. What was that? So that was 15. 17, Auburn completely, it looked like 17 for a second there. And then 19, Bo Nix and them getting down 21-0, trying to come back to win. 21 was probably kind of nondescript as well. 23, Brock Bowers. And then this one, they won by 10. I wrote that it was decisive on the message board. I mean, it certainly was in the second half. So, it's easy to remember Auburn games. It's a true rivalry. When someone tries to tell you that South Carolina or even Tennessee I have a really good memory about these things. I can tell you whether it was a day, night. I can usually tell you the weather conditions and usually which television network it was on. I can't tell you final scores. That's harder for me. But I can tell you what happened in each Georgia game dating back to the mid-90s. No problem. But, Auburn's more memorable because Auburn means more. Auburn means more than Tennessee, than LSU, than South Carolina, than Kentucky and so forth. It means more because it's 130 years of doing this, and the incestual nature of things. Kirby talking about taking his younger son to see where his father had a baseball diamond named after him in that area. He grew up going to Auburn. That's special for him. Kirby, you go back and watch the 96 game and watch how energetic he was on the sideline during that Auburn game. Just look for 16, even on the sideline. This guy's running around going crazy. I mean, no helmet, it matters to him. And it matters to this Georgia folks, the community. These 2 schools have definitely gone in different directions, though, I have to say. Not just, on the football field, but Georgia doesn't look like it used to as an institution. It's a better school by a lot. Auburn's better too, but it hasn't zoomed up like Georgia has. And I think over time, what I'd be concerned about if I were Auburn is, that my peers, Auburn, very specifically Alabama and Georgia, will use their resources to get too far away from what we are. Auburn has always been a value option, a great option. If you don't get into Georgia, it gives you everything you want in terms of an SEC school. If you want to join a cult, stuff like that. I mean, it's not Georgia Tech. It's not whatever. And so you got a lot of Atlanta people. Well, that's slowed some, and people are going to Georgia. They're wanting to go to Georgia. Some people are going to South Carolina and all this stuff. So I would be concerned a little bit if I were Auburn, just on the institutional level. But I look at things like that. I'm kind of a dork that way. But I think for Georgia, in terms of football, they've zoomed past Auburn too. And, Auburn, it's amazing what Georgia did being a team that won that many national championships in the summer. I mean, Auburn was kind of unbeatable this summer. Not so much on Saturday night. Thanks for watching.